Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. Most of the ciphers and codes in Shadows of Evil, and a couple of the Eisendrache ones as well, have been solved in the following way. Somebody would go to a website that contains lots of different ciphers and programs written for the purpose of solving those ciphers, and then would copy out the text from in-game, paste it into the website, and hope that it decoded properly. Now, I am by no means saying right now that that is a bad way to go about doing things or anything along those lines. It is perfectly valid. I've done that in the past myself. I will continue to do it myself because it is an effective way of getting things done sharpish. However, sometimes, every now and then, when a different kind of code or a different kind of cipher just walks right by and you're like, hey there, cipher, I'm gonna solve ya, but it's gonna take a little bit more thinking and a little bit more work. It is just so damn enjoyable. It is in those moments that I am in my element and I'm just loving all of the work that Treyarch do to completely boggle the minds of their fans by throwing in stuff into the maps that at first glance looks like complete gobbledygook or might look like complete junk, but when you do the work and you put the hours in, which was basically me from midnight till about 5 or 6 a.m. last night working on this bad boy with my buddy Water. We were both in a Skype call, and okay, actually, how about I give you a little rundown of how this all transpired. We'll talk about the solution, and we'll talk about the explanation, but a lot of you guys always ask me to explain how I got the answer to a cipher, and so in this video, I'll cram it in here at the beginning. So let's take a trip back down memory lane to last night. It's about midnight, and I've decided to start writing out all of the chalkboards on Der Eisendrache. Specifically, the chalkboards containing the words Section 1, Section 2, Section 3, and Section 4. These 4 chalkboards all make up one big cipher, but at the time, we had no way of knowing whether we were going to get a picture from them, whether those equations were going to give us some kind of chunk of picture that, when combined with the other chalkboards, would form a full image, or whether we were going to get something else entirely. We were unsure, so I started writing out this Section 1 chalkboard, which, as you can see, is a bit of a task, and especially writing it down on a computer, you've got to get all the parentheses in there and all the syntax correct, and it's a bit of a pain in the butt. So I was writing that out. My buddy Water sends me a message and he's like, bro, I've done this before. I know exactly what's going on here. Jump on Skype. Let's get things going. So I'm like, sure thing, pal. Let's smash this cipher to smithereens right now. We jump on Skype, and what we ended up doing was using a reverse-inverse graphing calculator to look at the equations we were given. So for example, you might have something like x minus 3 all squared times y minus 2 all squared plus the absolute value of x minus 2 plus the absolute value of x minus 3 minus 1 all squared. That might be a typical line, something like that. And what all these lines would correspond to is individual letters that are being graphed on graph paper, basically, on a set of XY axes. And so, because we were getting loads of letters in a row, obviously, this would basically spell out a sentence, or more than one sentence. So that's what we were doing. We were basically having to recognize patterns and say, okay, so that is the equation of a circle. So there's a good chance, because we know the equation of a circle has curves in it, and it's looking like a circle basically when graphed, there's a good chance that is going to be an O, but it could also be a Q. We were also having to do things like say, okay, so the letter H, for example, has 2 vertical lines and a horizontal line joining them, so we know that the equation that we're going to get, the form of it, should look a certain way. We're going to have a certain number of terms with no x values, a certain number of terms with no y values. We had things like the letter C, and then we could also have the letter K if it had this modifier at the beginning showing that it did indeed have that vertical line, because obviously C and K on the graph are the same, minus the fact that K has that vertical line at the start on the left side. So we were doing all this pattern recognition, and what we would do is we would guess a couple of letters. So for example, DI, and then straight away, as soon as we got DI, I went, boom, Divinium, holy guacamole, it's lit, boys. The beacon is lit, it's flying off into outer space right now. This is freaking epic. We ended up continuing, and it wasn't actually Divinium, it was Division 9. That was my second guess. And so we kept going through, we kept having to say, okay, well, this word starts with an F, maybe it's going to be FR, maybe that's freedom or something like that, and then going, oh, well, maybe it's not actually an F, maybe it's an E, and we got that tiny little bit of the code wrong, and so we had to keep checking through it. Treyarch actually made multiple mistakes in their written out codes on the walls, on the chalkboards, they're not correct by any means. In the first chunk, the first section, there is an 11, I believe, where there should be a 41, and it's things like that that really threw us off for some time, but we sort of skipped past them and then came back to them here and there. When we were looking at the bit that said ancient beasts, we couldn't get that for ages because A was a really peculiar letter. It seemed to sort of modify itself very strangely in our text for some reason, and we couldn't really get the pattern at the time of looking at it. So we had all these different things on our minds that we were playing with. I've got some really cool notes written out of things like having a square plus an absolute might give you a certain letter, maybe a J, for example, how you've got things like A, which has the double whole square, and just all sorts of stuff like that. It was a super duper fun process, and I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of an insight into my enthusiasm into this topic, because holy guacamole, it was damn fun. It was so damn fun to work our way through this and be sort of trying to guess a word and then going, oh my goodness, what if it's ancient, and then the ancients, and then all the ideas that sort of spring out of that, and then we were going, okay, what's the next word? Beasts, and then we keep going, and it was, oh man, it was just so good. So I wanted to give you guys an idea of how we actually solved this. If there are people complaining in the comments right now saying, MrRoflWaffles, I didn't need to know how you solved this, I just wanted the solution. To those people, I say, bruh, I spent hours and hours of my time decoding a message for your benefit, and now I've told you how I did it. It's not the end of the world. It's not gonna kill you. Chill. So, with that out of the way, let's finally talk about what it means. And we'll talk about what the actual message is as well. So, the message we got is as follows. Division 9 has completed the resurrection of the ancient beasts for your eastern front. We expect Group 935 to reciprocate the favor. That's it. That's the entire message. All 4 of those chalkboards, all, 120 plus lines of equations that we had to go through, gives us basically 2 sentences. Which is pretty crazy, but they're still interesting sentences regardless. Now then, it's important to remember and understand the fact that the evidence and information I'm going to be using to back up my explanation of this message, because I'm certainly not going to be pulling things out of thin air. You guys know me, I do this stuff for real. So all that evidence, things like the scraps of paper littered around the map of Der Eisendrache, which are written in Japanese, are still not fully translated because we're still missing scraps. I've got, I think, 9 out of 10 of them, so we're nearly there, but we're still not 100% sure what those sorts of messages mean, and similarly, we're yet to really fully understand the context of some of the radios and some of the other stuff that we have decoded on the map. But what I can do in this video is give you an explanation with the current evidence. It's the best we can do. So, the very first thing mentioned in this message is Division 9. Until now, we have literally never ever heard of Division 9. We didn't hear about them in World at War, in Black Ops 1, Black Ops 2, the teasers, viral campaigns, and trailers for Black Ops 3, Shadows, the Giant. We've literally never heard of them until this map. And then suddenly, for some reason, Treyarch have decided to pull all of the stops out and throw them in left, right, and center. They're mentioned in a couple of different places. For example, Groff, that's Dr. Groff on the moon, who's working obviously with Richtofen before Richtofen then decides that he's going to deviate from that timeline and change things up a bit and eventually kills Groff, who is on the moon when we send the rockets to the moon and blow the damn thing up in Der Eisendrache. He talks about Division 9, and specifically, if you listen carefully, he states that they are allies to Group 935. Now, this is fascinating because from the way it's worded, we can infer some things about what he means and what Division 9 are and who they are. So let's think about an example of, say, Churchill, okay? World War II, wartime Prime Minister for the United Kingdom. If he said something like, the research being carried out by our allies into thermonuclear weaponry will be a great boon for our allegiance over the course of the war, then from that, you would think, okay, he's talking about people like the Americans, right? The people who are allies to the United Kingdom. He's not going to be talking about the Brits, because he is one of the Brits, and you're not an ally to yourself. You are yourself, right? So what Groff is saying here is that there is an outside entity that is not German, and that is the key here. They are not part of Hitler's sort of forces. They are not part of that research team. They are not just another group like we have Group 935, Group 601. It's not one of those. It's a separate body entirely, but they are allied to the Germans, and by association, they are allied to Group 935. However, Groff goes on to say that there have been successful field trials, and as such, the work that they're doing may potentially be implemented later on in the winter, the coming winter of that year. Is that just his German pride and his sort of cockiness that he's within the best of all the research programs, Group 935 that is, and as such, all of the others are sort of inferior, even though they might actually be doing some good work that may yield some good results? Maybe it's just the fact that he thinks that they're not actually up to scratch. But that said, he says that their work may help them break the stalemate on the Eastern Front. That's key. What is it that he says will be the catalyst for the breaking of that very stalemate? The deployment of the specimen. Interesting stuff, right? So we're getting more and more information about Division 9, where they stand in the world, who they're allied to, and what they are working on. If we go back to our original message now, it says, Division 9 has completed the resurrection of the ancient beasts for your Eastern Front. We expect Group 935 to reciprocate the favor. So, this is super interesting because with that previous piece of knowledge, we can extend our understanding of the group and say the following. The vibe I get is that what is essentially going on here is that Division 9 are the Japanese equivalent of Group 935. I'm going to go into a lot more detail about who they are and talking about their true intentions in another video. Basically, that's going to be a Who Are Division 9 Explained video, but for now, we're focusing on this cipher. We've got to remember, the end is in sight. We've got to figure out what this cipher means. That is the purpose of this video. So, Division 9 specifically have completed the resurrection of the ancient beasts for the Eastern Front of whoever this message is being sent to. And so, I presume that what is happening here is Division 9 is saying, okay, we have successfully completed the resurrection of the ancient beasts, more on that in a moment, and we're now going to send this message to Group 935, to the Germans, to our allies, their allies, and say, alright pal, I've done you a favor, would you mind doing me one as well? Sorted. Lovely. That's the crux of the message, but the ancient beasts is the point where you might get a bit unstuck and say, just hold on 1 minute, what the hell are the ancient beasts? Are they zombies or something else? Once again, let's look at the evidence. Where have we heard beasts or beast before in the Call of Duty Zombies storyline? Well, when I was deciphering this, the first thing I thought of was that Origins message that I decoded all those years ago. Do you remember? I posted my videos of the decoded Origins ciphers, and one of them was worn messines. Something blue in the earth. Not clay. We grew weak. Thought it was flu. Men became beasts. Blood turned to ash, liberate tute de infinis. So in that context, what is happening is the soldiers in the battlefields of World War I are stumbling across this blue clay, which they think is clay, but it isn't clay, it's 115 in the ground. I've made an entire series of videos talking about this theory, so go on over to those if you're interested, but they stumble across this 115, and obviously, as we know 115 is prone to do, it really starts taking its toll on the soldiers in the area. As such, in this particular scenario, men started becoming zombies. That is the insinuation here, that is what is being implied. Men became beasts. Their blood turned to ash. They really were not in a good state whatsoever. So that's one implementation of the word beast or beasts into a cipher, into a secret message, into the zombies storyline. But it's not the only example of beast or beasts popping up. We've got a more recent one that is actually, well, arguably not actually more recent, because then you would be kind of merging different timelines. Okay, that's just messy. Let's not go down that road. What I mean to say is that we have the word beast popping up in a map that is more recently released in terms of our real world than Origins was, and that map is Shadows of Evil. When you go into the squid form and decide to tentacle your way across the map in a very speedy fashion, that is referred to in-game as beast mode. As I'm sure is apparent to every single one of you watching the video right now, and by the way, if you're still watching, you are the MVP. What I'm sure is apparent is that there is a bit of a sizable difference between a zombie and a squid. there's a little bit of a distinction there. I think if we look at just the wording alone, it certainly seems like the beast mode implementation in Shadows of Evil is the more likely candidate for this beast that is being referred to, or rather these beasts that are being resurrected. However, just looking at the wording would be complete folly and we would be missing the bigger picture. Let's think about this. Why would this Apothicon race of squid-like alien monsters need to be resurrected specifically to fight in and eventually help overcome the stalemate on Germany's Eastern Front? Since when could a squid, I'm calling them squids, I know, Apothicons, yada yada, same difference. Since when could those squids be resurrected and then just pointed towards the enemy and you can just sort of go, yeah, shoot, go on, Fido. There you go, run along, kill some bad guys for me, would ya? Oh, and by the way, leave our troops alone and don't maim and destroy the rest of humanity while you're at it. Just do my bidding, that would be great. That is certainly not the impression that is given in Shadows of Evil. No, sir. And so, potentially, what we're seeing here is not the Apothicons, no squids for you, and it's not zombies either. Potentially, it's something else entirely. I mean, it could well be zombies. It could be that the Division, this Division 9, have decided that they're going to help out 935 and resurrect a load of zombies on the Eastern Front to help Germany win the war, this undead army that Maxis has talked about for so damn long. But the issue I have with that is that they are doing their own experiments anyway within Group 935, making zombies. They are well aware of the resurrection effects that 115 has, and they know they've had first-hand experience with it on Origins. They also talk about it, for example, in Der Eisendrache. Groff says that the 115 that they have been working with has forwarded their research leaps and bounds, and without it, they definitely wouldn't be where they were today. And as such, they have to know about its effect. They have to know about that reanimative property. They have to. They know for a fact that 115 is not going to leave you smiling. It's going to leave you in a bad state, and when you die, as we obviously know, it will reanimate you and boom, you're a zombie. And then obviously in the future, when we go to maps like Kino in the 60s, and in the future after that as well, continually, we see the efforts from Group 935 to make use of this to actually create this full army, this working army that they can control to do their every bidding, and that's what we see in the projector room and stuff like that. But I digress. The point I'm making here with all of this rambling about the story is that I feel like Group 935 are well aware and certainly capable of using 115 to create zombies. I think that they've got to know about that, and as such, it would seem extremely strange to me for the 9th Division of this Imperial Japanese research team to suddenly be like, yo, pal, I've got your back. Even though you're completely capable of doing this yourself, I'm going to make some zombies for you on the Eastern Front, and then I'm going to ask for a favor in return. That just doesn't seem likely to me. So what it actually is that's going on here is potentially a little deeper and a little more ambiguous. Leave a comment if you're still watching the video. Oh my goodness, you've made it a long way in. We're nearly 18 minutes into the video right now. Congratulations! So leave a comment with your thoughts as to who or what the ancient beasts are. We could also look at the word ancients and say, hold on a minute, okay? The ancients are talked about in Origins. I believe they're talked about in Shadows of Evil. They've been mentioned in the past as well. So is this a play on that part of it, and the beasts part is more just the fact that they don't really know the true nature of these ancients? And then we can extend it further and say, okay, so we've had the ancients talked about in Origins. Obviously, Samantha talks about her father's research into their work and stuff like that, but the Ancient Order of the Keepers? Remember them from Shadows of Evil? And also by association from Origins? Interesting, right? So we're beginning to create a little web here. A little web of interesting ideas that we can thread together to give us a rough picture of what this cipher is actually saying. This is why I said at the beginning of the video, I'm gonna explain what's going on, but what's going on is not exactly easy to explain because we don't know, and we will continue to not know for a long, long time. That's just the way it is with the story, and so I've explained it as clearly as possible and shown you the different options for some of the interpretations of the message itself, but ultimately, your opinion is just as good as mine. So leave those comments in the comment section down below. If you have any questions about Division 9, about other things in the story that you want me to explain, that should also be left as a comment, or you can tweet me as well. I'm going to be explaining loads and loads of story stuff over the coming days and weeks, and as far as people go, I tend to be quite invested in the story, and as such, I'm going to be bringing you some damn good content, I assure you. So, I have been MrRoflWaffles. Thanks for watching my video. If you've enjoyed, then leave a like. If you haven't, let me know why in the comment section down below, and as always, I'll see you next time. Toodles!